I hope you're already feeling very inspired after that presentation. I know what holidays I'll be booking next. I definitely fancy getting dressed up on the Orient Express. But I'm taking you west now. So I am taking you to the beautiful western part of Canada. I often think I have the best job in the world. I have been lucky enough to be on Rocky Mountaineer 7 times. So I'm hoping to get that up to double digits in the not too distant future. But 2020 was a year where we should have been celebrating our 30th birthday. But I think like all the rest of us, birthdays didn't happen in 2020. So we are postponing for another year. So just to give you a bit of background, we are still very much a family-owned business based out of Vancouver. We've had actually over 2 million guests travel with us in that time. And I will be talking a little bit forward about our new route in the USA at the end of this presentation, but I'm going to focus on Canada for just now. So I'm going to attempt to play you a very short video just to give you a bit of a flavour about what Rocky Mountaineer is all about. Okay, I'm hoping that wasn't too jittery for you and you got at least an idea of what we are. Oh. Oh. There we go. So our 3 rail routes in Canada go through the provinces of British Columbia and Alberta. So the unique thing about Rocky Mountaineer is that we are a daylight service only train. So you will never sleep on board Rocky Mountaineer. You will always sleep in hotel accommodation. The key reason why we do that is because you are traveling through some of the most magnificent scenery in the world. And if we traveled at night, you wouldn't get to see all those glorious mountains and canyons. So we have 3 routes for you to choose from, all of which go either in or out of Vancouver. And you can travel in either direction. So you can either travel eastbound out of Vancouver and head your way on up towards the Rockies, or you can start your journey with the Rockies, and then carry on down westbound to Vancouver. I'm going to talk today about the rail experience, but obviously with Wexas, they can create a fabulous itinerary for you where you really get to experience the Rockies, whether it be by coach or by car hire. And there's lots of things you can do in both Alberta and British Columbia in the area. But this will just give you a flavour of what the train element is going to be about. So our most popular rail route is called First Passage to the West. So this is a 2-day consecutive rail journey linking Vancouver and Banff. So if you're traveling eastbound, you'll start your journey with us in Vancouver in the morning, spend a full day heading up towards the little mountain town, the little kind of working town, I'd say, of Kamloops. So you'll leave the coastal mountain scenery of Vancouver, head on up towards some very arid, dry terrain. Actually, Kamloops, believe it or not, is classified as a desert area, which people don't really think of as existing in Canada. You'll spend the night in your hotel in Kamloops, back on the train the next morning, and this is when you'll head into true Rockies territory. So this fabulous mountain scenery that you can see in the image behind you. And you can either choose to start or end your journey in Lake Louise or Banff. Here is beautiful Vancouver. I was lucky enough to live here for a year until my visa expired and the Canadian government chucked me out and I cried for 9.5 hours all the way home on the plane. But if you're spending some time in Vancouver, I would spend at least 2 to 3 nights to make the most of this beautiful city. It's very cosmopolitan. It's got this great downtown area with skyscrapers and great bars and restaurants. But what's very unique about Vancouver is that it has this backdrop of mountains and sea as well, which is really quite rare to find in a city. You can also kind of see behind the skyscrapers here, you've got Stanley Park. So it's a really, really beautiful park that you can go and explore some of the trails in there. It has what's known as the seawall, so you can walk all the way outside it. There's an aquarium, there's totem poles. It's a really, really lovely space to go and kind of get out of the city a little bit. So you'll leave Vancouver in the morning, and Kamloops is going to be where you'll spend your evening in your hotel. Kamloops is a little working Canadian town. You'll only be spending the night here, and believe you me, it is surprisingly exhausting eating and drinking and not doing very much all day. You will be quite shattered by the time you get into Kamloops. So it's really just a place where you'll lay your head at night. And next day, then you'll be back on the train heading on up towards the Rockies. There's actually is not Lake Louise. It's called Moraine Lake, which is just around the corner from Lake Louise, really. But you'll probably have seen this very iconic image many, many times before. One of my favorite places to go in Canada, and certainly well worth visiting. And here is beautiful Banff. So this is the main high street. That's Cascade Mountain in the background. And the one thing I will say about my presentation, these photographs look great, but they pale in comparison to what it looks like in real life. Banff is a really lovely little mountain town. Very informal, great kind of bars and restaurants where you can get steaks, and there's a fondue restaurant. It's actually got quite a Western flavour to it as well. So you might see people walking down the high street with cowboy boots and cowboy hats on. Next route for you to choose from is our Journey Through the Clouds route. So this is another 2-day consecutive rail route, but instead of finishing up in Banff or Lake Louise, we'll take you further north on this journey towards the little town of Jasper. On this route as well, you will go past Mount Robson, which is this mountain in the image here. This is actually the highest peak in the Rockies. It's also known as the Great Fright. If you are into mountaineering, you might have heard of it. Apparently it's terrifying to climb. I haven't ventured anywhere near it myself, but I've heard it's truly terrifying. But it's actually so high, it has its own microclimate. So more often than not, Mount Robson will actually be covered in clouds. So the people on this train got very, very lucky on this day because they've got it in crystal clear conditions. And then finally, we've got our Rainforest to Gold Rush route to pick from. So this links Vancouver and Jasper again, but this is great if you want to spend a bit more time on the train. So it's going to give you an extra half day. So your half day will be linking Vancouver to Whistler. Then you've got a full day between Whistler and the little gold rush town of Quesnel. And then you've got a full day on the train again between Quesnel and Jasper. Whistler is a lovely upmarket town. It's actually was one of the co-host towns with Vancouver for the 2010 Winter Olympics, which is why you can see the Olympic rings in this image. Very, very famous in winter for skiing, but summer it's a fabulous place to visit. Great for seeing black bears as well. They often roam around the golf course in the mornings and evenings. So I think if you were there in summer, you'd be very hard pushed not to see a bear. But it's got great boutiques, great restaurants, really upmarket dining, and just a lovely place to spend some time. And Quesnel is a really, really small city. Again, it's just going to be your overnight destination, but it's actually where prospectors went to go and find gold. So there's some interesting history in this town as well. So that's your 3 routes for you to pick from. When to travel, I always get asked this all the time. And the one thing I would say about Canada is that it's always going to look great whenever you go. But it really kind of depends on what you want from your holiday. So if you're into wildlife, I would recommend traveling in the spring months, particularly probably May and June, because this is when the animals have woken up from their hibernation and they're really, really active trying to find food. So I have been very lucky to see multiple bears from the train. As I mentioned, I lived in Canada for a year and I never saw a grizzly bear. So for every 100 black bears, there is 1 grizzly bear. And I was lucky enough in 2019, as we were pulling into Banff, to see a huge grizzly bear. He is called the Boss. And that was right from sitting on the train itself. So that was a really fabulous experience. Unfortunately, I don't have the power to guarantee you a Boss sighting, but I will keep my fingers crossed for you. Summer is when everything's in full bloom. So you've got the gorgeous kind of wild flowers all out. Everything's very green and lush. And this is when all the lakes will have thawed as well. So Lake Louise sometimes doesn't actually thaw until the start of June. So you'll see all these lovely green emerald lakes in their full glory, really, in the summer months. And then fall is really great time to go to see all the colours change in the trees. So you've got some lovely yellows and oranges here. I personally prefer this time of year to travel to the Rockies, particularly because a lot of the tourists clear out as well. So you'll find that summer can get quite busy, whereas if you go kind of late September, even going into October, it does tend to get a bit quieter and you can enjoy all these scenes a bit more to yourself. And wildlife, this is a huge draw for clients joining us on board, as I mentioned. So we've got a black bear at the top here. I will guarantee that you will see an eagle sighting. That's pretty much a safe bet. We've got some very well camouflaged mountain goats in the bottom middle image, which are native to the Kamloops area. So they're very often spotted. And then we have the elusive moose. So they are very shy creatures. So quite difficult to see a moose, so you will get quite lucky if you see one, but they're fabulous, kind of awkward, cumbersome animals, so great to look out for them. We've got 2 levels of service for you to pick from on board as well. So Silverleaf is a single level carriage. This photograph looks quite deceptive. It's nothing like trains that we have in the UK. Everything in Canada is super scale, and that's no exception on Rocky Mountaineer. So inside, it's actually really, really light and spacious, and you've got a lot of space before your head reaches the ceiling. It's a very informal social atmosphere here, and we really want you to feel like you're in Canada. So all the food will be locally sourced and organic. You can see we've got our host walking down the train here. And in Silverleaf, you have a drop-down table. So you'll get your meals and your drinks served to you at your seats in Silverleaf. And then we've got our Goldleaf. I am certainly a Goldleaf girl. I do enjoy traveling by Goldleaf in Canada. And there's a few kind of key differences between our Goldleaf carriages and Silverleaf. Goldleaf carriages are double decker, so they're much, much taller than our Silverleaf carriages. Top levels where your clients will sit for the duration of the day. And we've got these incredible panoramic windows which go all the way across the top. So when you sit up there, you're really, really immersed in the scenery. The eagles and the hawks will fly right over your head. And you really feel like you're in and immersed in Canada. Downstairs is the dining cart, so that's where you'll move downstairs for your meals, and it is Michelin star trained chefs preparing your meals too. They will be the best pancakes you've ever tasted on board Rocky Mountaineer, and the rest of the food will be things like British Columbia salmon, Alberta beef. If any of you have been to the States before or Canada, you know that portion sizes are plentiful. That is no exception on the train. You will roll off the train. You will not be leaving hungry, I can guarantee that. And we've also got an outdoor vestibule area at the back of every train. So this is a really nice space to go and get some views, take in that lovely clean Rockies air, and also take some photographs too, as you can see here. So typical day on board the train will start quite early, where you'll arrive at one of our stations and board the train. When you're traveling with us, it is an all-inclusive experience. So you don't need to put your hands into your pockets for anything else. All your spirits, your premium branded spirits and wines and food and snacks are all included. The one thing that really brings our experience to life, though, is our hosts on board. So we have an incredibly high retention rate. We have multiple hosts that have actually been with us since our very first season 30 years ago. Most of them are Canadian. Canadians have a great sense of humour, so you will laugh a lot on this journey. And they're there to really bring the whole experience to life. So they storytell throughout the day. They'll point out any historic landmarks. They're also all linked by radio. So if someone at the front of the train sees a bear, they radio through to all of their other colleagues saying, get your cameras ready, there's a bear coming up on the right. And then it's quite chaotic as everybody tries to get the best image of that bear. So your host will be looking after you for the entire time that you're traveling with us. And then in the evening, we will disembark the train and you will head to your hotel accommodation. One thing to note is that your luggage will actually not be traveling on board with us on the train. It will actually travel by bus, as it's quicker to travel by road than it is by rail. But what that means is your luggage is actually going to be waiting for you in your hotel room when you arrive. So when you're sat on the train, let's say you're rolling into Kamloops, We actually give you your hotel room key. You get on the bus to take you to your hotel, which will take maybe 5 minutes. And then you don't even need to check in at the hotel. You just use your room key, go to your room, and your bag's going to be waiting for you. In the morning, you leave your bags in your room and off they go again. So it's a really hassle seamless process. Just to little mention here, if you are thinking about doing Rocky Mountaineer, I would highly recommend looking at doing an Alaska cruise with it as well. It adds a completely different element to your journey. Obviously, Wexas can look at your various different options, but pretty much most cruise lines that are out there will do an Alaska itinerary. And if you're going all that way to Vancouver, it really does make sense to add on an experience in Alaska as well. So I did promise I would talk about our brand new route, Rockies to the Red Rocks in the USA. So for the last 5 years or so, we've actually been looking for a new route to add to our family. And we know that the 2 million guests that have travelled with us in the past are desperate to come back, but they might not necessarily want to come back to Western Canada. So we've been looking for somewhere that they might want to travel to, and also anyone else that's new to travelling with Rocky Mountaineer would be interested in. So this new route is a 2-day route linking Denver in Colorado to Moab in Utah. And I'm going to attempt to play a video again to bring this route to life. Oh, no. I'm not actually, I do apologize. So this route is going to be in the American Rockies in Colorado. So lots of incredible canyons, and then incredibly different scenery as it moves into Utah. So you've got these incredible red rocks here, these desert landscapes, real wild, wild west territory. So this is a map of our route in the USA. So as I mentioned, Denver and Moab. So our midpoint destination is the little resort town in Colorado of Glenwood Springs, which I will talk about in a bit more detail. Like our routes in Canada, you can do them in either direction. So you can start in Denver or you can start in Moab, whatever works for your itinerary. We've also got various itineraries that Wexas can look at for you. So you can either travel on towards Salt Lake City, or you could start or end with a bit of a party in Las Vegas if you prefer. So the first day will be a sort of 9 a.m. start in Denver, and then finishing up in Glenwood Springs around about 5 p.m. So this route is actually following the mighty Colorado River for most of the day. So really, really steep canyons. A lot of the journey that this train will be taking is actually inaccessible by car. So we're really the only people getting into these remote areas. Very, very different scenery to our Canadian offering, but incredibly spectacular nonetheless. And then our second day, you'll have spent your night in Glenwood Springs. You'll start in the morning, leaving Glenwood Springs, and then heading up towards Moab. So very, very different scenery. So you've got so the Book Cliffs here, LaSalle Mountains. If you've ever seen Thelma and Louise, that is actually filmed in this part of the world. And I think this is a great opportunity to actually get your own cowboy boots and cowboy hats out. I think this is really the place to embrace your inner cowboy. On this route, we are just taking our silverleaf carriages. There is actually a tunnel called Moffat Tunnel, which has a height restriction. So we're unable to bring our gold leaf carriages, unfortunately. But silverleaf is still, as I mentioned, a fabulous experience, still very, very light and spacious inside. You get great visibility from the whole carriage. But we are also offering something called Silverleaf Plus on this route. So you will still be sat in a Silverleaf carriage, but we're actually converting some lounge cars that will be turned into American bars for our Silverleaf Plus guests. So they're going to be a chance to go and have a cocktail made by a mixologist, a nice opportunity to socialize with other guests, and you'll also get elevated dining options too. These are the destinations that we will be traveling to. So as I mentioned, we've got Denver, Glenwood Springs, and Moab. Denver is known as the Mile High City in Colorado. So you've got the American Rockies that you can see in the background here. Great place to spend perhaps 1 or 2 nights and enjoy everything that Denver has to offer. Glenwood Springs is your overnight stop in this journey. So Glenwood Springs is a really lovely resort town, famous for the largest hot springs pool in the world, which is actually open till 9 or 10 p.m. in the evening. So it's going to be really nice for our guests to have had a very luxurious, indulgent day on the train and then head to the hot springs pool in the evening. Lots of little artisan restaurants, boutiques, and all kind of cuisine catered for in the restaurants in Glenwood Springs. And then Moab is quite a creative, arty town. It's known as the gateway to the 5 national parks in Utah. So you've got Arches National Park at the top here, and you've got Canyonlands. You've got Monument Valley very near, Bryce Canyon, Zion National Park. It really is a great place to base yourself, to go and explore this incredible state and all that Utah has to offer. You're going to see incredible scenery from the train as well. And I think what could be better than sitting back with a glass of wine, seeing these rolling red rocks go by, and just truly taking it all in. And then Glenwood Springs Hotels, these are just some of the hotel partners that we are working with. So these are all historic properties, but really high standard of accommodation. And that is a whirlwind through all of our Rocky Mountaineer routes. So any questions, please do fire away.
Great, Sarah. Well, we've got lots of questions which vary from the very detailed to the slightly more open-ended. So let's start with a very detailed one. If you're traveling from Banff to Vancouver, which is the best side of the train to sit on?
That's an incredibly good question. It really doesn't matter at all. Bear in mind, you're actually covering the length of about 600 miles, which is the entire length if you travel the UK pretty much. So at one point, you can see in the image behind me, it probably is better to be on one side of the train for this particular lake, but then you'll turn a corner and there'll be another lake on the other side. So we don't assign any sides to our clients because it really doesn't matter. The scenery just changes so much in that journey.
And Sarah, do you get like an allocated seat, or how does it work?
You do, yeah. So you'll be in the same seat for your entire journey with us. So it'll be the same host looking after you as well. But all the seats, imagine you're kind of in a business class seat on a plane, all reclining, tons of leg room. A lot of them have got heated seats as well. So it will be the same seats for your entire duration with us.
Great, thank you. And then with regards to people who are traveling on their own, a single traveler, is there either a sort of a concept of whether it's a single traveler discount or a single traveler supplement? Could you explain a little bit about that?
Well, on the train itself, you would just pay for an individual ticket, and you can actually say a preference to us whether you would rather sit with somebody else or whether you would prefer just to have the 2 seats to yourself. That's absolutely fine. We can accommodate that. And then obviously when outside of the train, when you're traveling around the Rockies and you're in Vancouver, I would suggest working with Wexas, and then they can look at ways of booking hotels and other experiences for you. But the train itself, you just book a ticket.
Great, lovely, thank you for that. And then what about, I mean, you were eulogizing on about wonderful sounding salmon and beef, which to me sounded great, but of course there are some people that have sort of specific dietary requirements. Can those be catered for?
Absolutely, yeah. So one thing Canadians are very, very good at is accommodating dietary requirements, and that's no exception on the train as well. So as long as people let us know in advance whether they're vegan, celiac, we can't cater for halal or kosher, but pretty much everything else we can cater for.
Lovely, thank you. And then you, somewhere when you were talking about the Canadian routes of the train, you showed us a wonderful outdoor viewing area. Can the outdoor viewing area be accessed by Silverleaf guests?
It can't, no. So Silverleaf guests, when you enter into a Silverleaf carriage, there are these huge kind of oversized windows that do drop down. So you could probably even fit kind of 3 people lined up, so you could look out the window and get some fresh air. But Silverleaf guests can't access the outside area, no.
Yeah, I think perhaps there was a picture of one of those when you were showing us that stunning mountain that you said isn't always available. You can't always see it because sometimes it's a bit cloudy. Perhaps that was there were some people looking out of an open window there. So that
could have been it. Yeah, that would make sense.
That was the Silver Leaf experience. Final question: which is your favourite route?
I'll tell you why I have a favourite route. So mine is First Passage to the West, which links Vancouver to Banff. It's the most historic, so I think you get the most interesting stories on that route. It comes with a caveat, all of the routes are obviously amazing. They're all there's not huge differences between them. You're obviously in the mountains. But First Passage to the West has a lovely lady called Doris. She lives in a house outside Kamloops on a lake called Shuswap Lake. and her house basically backs onto the railway tracks. This is a genuinely true story. For the last kind of 15 years or so, she has never missed Rocky Mountaineer go past. She stands on her porch and literally waves to absolutely everybody. And the only reason, so I'm told, that she knows it's Rocky Mountaineer passing and not a freight train is that her dog has been trained to bark when it's Rocky Mountaineer and not a freight train. So every time I've gone, I've got a photo of Doris waving at the train. So yeah, I love that route for Doris.
Great, lovely. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. You know, completely different experiences to the Belmont trains that Lucy and Pascal talked to us about. It is amazing to see all that beautiful Canadian and American scenery laid out before us. Let's hope we're allowed to travel again very soon.